Hi Dawn, nice to be speaking to you from inside the lifeboat shed. Perhaps you could tell us a bit on the idea behind how the Benholm and Johnshaven Heritage Society started?
Good morning, Jennifer. Yeah, the reason we had to form a heritage group began really in the 1990s. And this was the result of the death of a local man, David Logan McBay. He had a good collection of historical items relating to Johnshaven. In this collection was a letter to his mother when David was in the D-Day landings. The letter really should have gone to the Imperial War Museum, but sadly, 2 days after his interment, this collection, along with others, was lost by the clearing of his house. It was decided by the group to save any other artefacts relating to the history and the parish of Benholm and Johnshaven.
By what means did you pursue this idea?
Yeah, we decided to find someone who was going to help us to start up this society. So contact was made by a local historian, Clark Simpson, and his words to us was, "Okay, get on with it." And that's how the Heritage Society was formed.
And how was this done?
Good question, Jennifer. The idea was to find out how many items, including photographs and items of historical interest, were in the possession of the local community.
What steps were taken to build on this idea?
We decided by the group to hold an exhibition in the village hall. This was going to take part as a weekend event, and the amount of items brought in was overwhelming. This event was a great success for the group. However, all the items had to be returned to each individual who brought them in.
How did you go about finding a suitable place?
Due to the success of the exhibition, the committee agreed that a building had to be found to house any collection that would come into our possession. This building would have to have proper temperature control to store and preserve such artefacts, and a place where the public could view them and save for future generations to learn how Johnshaven developed. 2 buildings were considered by the group. First was a small fisherman's cottage in Dock Street. This was an early building, probably 1800s, which offered to the society by the local family. However, ownership of the property was in some doubt. Although this would have been an ideal building, we had to look for another site. Our second offer to the group was the Old Fish Smokehouse, also in Dock Street. This building was a fine example of an East Coast smokehouse. Historians in Scotland were invited to the site, and although they felt it should be saved and used for our project, they said that it would take a cash figure sum of $250,000 to buy and bring up to a habitual use. The committee felt that this was too much to try and raise in such a short space of time.
I imagine finding the funding for the project was your first big step.
Yes. The group had now to raise sufficient funds to reach the intended goal. So the group decided an events programme was to be set up to raise these funds. This began with the Fish Festival, which only cost us in the region of £600, which proved most successful and became a yearly event. Other events were involved, which were a Christmas market, a 12th night, plus arts exhibition and craft fairs.
And how did the lifeboat shed come about?
It was during the period of our fundraising in 1999 that Wilkies of Kirriemuir, a mill owner, offered us the lifeboat house, which had lain in the village empty for a few years, for a small fee. The committee set up legal papers which were signed and the building came into our possession. However, our fundraising event continued. This was mainly due to the success of the Fish Festival, which in turn defeated our aim to set up a place to house our collection of historical facts. And the Lifeboat House reverted to the original store for a fish festival and its equipment.
How did you overcome this problem?
Addition had to be made by the committee to get us back to our original goal. So we approached another group who were willing to take over the running of the Fish Festival and other events. So we handed all the items, equipment to this group to manage with an agreement that we were to give them a place at the Fish Festival to raise funds free of charge. This was agreed by the other group.
What steps were taken to set up the Heritage Centre?
It was decided by the group, after 2 disasters in trying to raise funds from the Heritage Lottery Fund, that another method had to be tried. This was resulted in employing a coordinator who was very much experienced in raising funds from various groups. This was a success, and we managed to raise funds from the Heritage Lottery and the European Fisheries Fund to get our project moving. Our work began in 2012, and by 2015 the work was completed. The doors were opened in May 2015.
What is the progress to date?
Well, it began in May. We decided to put on 2 events. First, there was to be an open day. That was to allow the community to come in and see the finished building, and which created a good deal of comments and interest from the public. The second event was an art show. That was to be held over 10 days, and this is by NEOS. And this brought over 1,000 visitors through our doors. However, now begins the hard task. We can make the building a positive attraction to the public and also create a healthy income.
So Don, how do you see the future of the Benham and Johnshaven Heritage Society?
Good. How would I look to the future of this building? I would like to see that the community use this building for the benefit of the education of the future generation, who will look back and see how the people lived and developed in this community. It also to say that we must not just stop and look at the artifacts that we have at the present, but the future artifacts which will be made to be added to the collection here. And the people here will have a place to come and find of how people lived in the past and in the present and in the future. And that's how I look to see this building progressing, going into the hands of the community for the proper use of a community project.
Well done. Thank you for taking the time and telling us about this worthwhile project. And we wish the Benham and Johnshaven Heritage Society all the success for the future.
You're welcome, Jennifer, and I hope this interview has given some insight into the workings of the Benham and Johnshaven Heritage Group.